A new U.S.-born pope on a first-ever visit to Cameroon's restive English-speaking Northwest, and who's not turning the other cheek.
Blessed are the peacemakers, but woe to those who manipulate religion in the very name of God for their own military, economic, or political gain, dragging that which is sacred into darkness and filth.
The message was the same when Leo XIV landed Wednesday in Yaoundé. And while it may sound like a rebuttal to a critical U.S. president who's an ocean away, that message you just heard first pointed to the leader in the room hosting Leo, 93-year-old Paul Biya, only the second head of state Cameroon has known since independence from France in 1960. We'll be asking our panel what makes the Bamenda leg of this Pope's four-nation tour of Africa historic, about the separatist rebels who called for a 4-day truce during that visit, and how the church can help in a nation where half the population's under 18 and whose politics can sometimes feel like a ticking time bomb, what with zero visibility surrounding Paul Biya's succession. And how, less than a year after succeeding Francis, has this Pope fared, under fire of late from Donald Trump and Catholic conservatives in his native United States, whether his message resonates among the faithful in an age of wars, growing inequality, artificial intelligence, and in the face of stiff competition for the church from evangelicals. The direction of the world's largest organized religion in the 21st century is on the table today in the France 24 debate, where we're asking about Pope Leo and, as he put it, the tyrants. With us from Yaoundé, Father Jean-Luc Enyege, historian, Provincial Superior for all Jesuit priests in West Africa. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Father Henry Chukwu is a priest of the Catholic Diocese in Nenewi, that's in Anambra State in southeastern Nigeria. You're currently northwest of Paris these days. Thank you for being with us, Father.
Thank you. Thank you.
And from New York, historian Charlotte Walker Said, Associate Professor of Political Science at the City University of New York's John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you're on the go, by the way, you can listen to the France 24 debate wherever podcasts are streamed. Yeah, he blasted the handful of tyrants who are ravaging Earth with war and exploitation. Pope Leo releasing a symbolic dove of peace in a land ravaged by a separatist rebellion since 2017, the northwest of Cameroon. The first native English-speaking sovereign pontiff hailed as he traveled to that part of the country that was once German, then a British colony.
So overjoyed, so overwhelmed. We have no words, but we say thank you, God, for this extraordinary day and for making us be alive to see this day.
The last time Pope came, I was too small when my parents could not bring me to receive those blessings. And today I'm present and strong to receive his blessings, which I know for our land, the Northwest especially, a lot of justice is going to pour.
Yeah, popes have gone to Cameroon 4 times. The last one was Pope Benedict. But as Indira Ayuk reports from Bamenda, this visit feels very different.
We are at the Bamenda airport where the Pope Leo XIV has just said he's concluding Mass with the population here in Bamenda. He arrived earlier today where he met with a cross-section of the community. He addressed peace and stated that he is in Cameroon and particularly in Bamenda to talk about peace. He hopes that the country and particularly the Northwest and Southwest regions will receive the peace that they deserve. His coming was much to the joy of inhabitants of the city of Bamenda who expressed their joy.
Just his presence, the presence of the Holy Father here will bring us all the grace he is carrying from the Vatican to us here. And we believe that the Holy Spirit is moving with him. And we know that with his intervention, somehow, talking with the authorities, we can bring about peace.
While meeting with a cross-section of the population as well as the apostolate here in Bamenda, several issues were discussed and all were aimed towards resolving the 10-year-old long Anglophone crisis. He listened to the testimonies of some victims of the 10-year-old crisis while praying or expressing hope that soon their pain will come to an end. Pope Leo XIV will leave Bamenda any moment from now and will return to his base in Yaoundé, where he'll continue his visit in Cameroon until Saturday.
Jean-Luc Enyege, let me begin by getting your reaction to that clip we heard, the locals in Bamenda hoping that this visit will lead to the Pope somehow talking with authorities to help bring peace to northwest Cameroon.
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm really happy to be here and to see my dear friend Charlotte again. The first thing to remember is that Bamenda is really one of the most vibrant Catholic strongholds in Cameroon, and it serves as a major ecclesiastical province uniting most dioceses from the English-speaking Cameroon, including Bamenda, Boya, Kumbo, Umba, and Manfe. So what we are witnessing today is that the faithful, all the faithful, regardless of their religion or political inclinations, are really welcoming the Holy Father with profound joy and hope, especially in this particular context of this region, which is marked by war, violence, and a huge humanitarian crisis.
Yeah, he hasn't brought peace, but he's brought with him a 4-day respite, with the rebellion announcing a ceasefire during that period. It's a part of the world that we don't hear much about otherwise. Your thoughts on if this visit can somehow change a dynamic?
I was really happy to listen to the Archbishop of Bamenda, Andrew Nkeyas, today, and then followed by the speech by the Pope Leo himself. And both of them emphasized the fact that the Pope is coming as a messenger of peace, of justice, and reconciliation. And we can see that his visit is already igniting hope and even offering comfort and consolation to a region suffering armed conflict, economic, and humanitarian disaster, including enormous difficulties for children to even peacefully go to school. I think that those challenges even make this visit more meaningful, because it reflects the closeness of a father coming to console his children, offering hope and encouragement to the many parishes and religious communities that have remained steadfast throughout the crisis. These men and women have encouraged and served their people. They have sustained hospitals, sustained schools, built orphanages, and they continue to be witnesses to this faith in action. I think that they represent the best of our country, the shiny city on the hill, as Leo said today.
Charlotte Walker Said, the northwest of Cameroon had always been an opposition stronghold. We remember multiple times the candidacy for president of John Furundi, who was sort of the historic opposition leader to Paul Biya. But after 2017, you have this rebellion. And as you just heard there from Father Enyege, it means things like children who don't go to school.
Absolutely. The region has suffered quite literally thousands of deaths. Civilians have been the most affected. They've been harmed both by the government forces and by the rebel forces, by the separatist insurgents. So the everyday population has really felt quite under fire from multiple different kinds of militias, state militias and non-state militias. And really their faith remains very strong. It is a region with a history and legacy, a very passionate attachment to Catholic Christianity and other forms of Christianity. And I think the Pope is always a real beacon of light for people around the world. And for him to visit this extraordinarily ravaged region is extremely touching for people there.
Father Chukwujeku, You're from southeastern Nigeria, which has also seen rebellions in the last couple of decades. Is it this? What's the parallel between what's happening in the northwest of Cameroon and what's happening in the southeast of Nigeria?
First of all, I will say that what is happening in Cameroon, the northwest of Cameroon, and what is happening in Nigeria, they are almost the same thing. The only difference I can say for now is that in Cameroon is suffering also from a long government structure that somehow needs to be changed, something like that. But in Nigeria, the government changes, and then but at each point in time, you see that maybe the opposition party or the ruling government, it affects everything happening, such that the separatists in the southeast of Nigeria have also decided their own need is also to have a separate country. It is not the solution, but the consequence is that people suffer it. There are places where schools are closed on Mondays because the separatists have decided that there will be no school on Monday. I can say that after some time, for some time now, there has been improvement, but it is still the same thing. Look at also kidnapping. When I watched the testimonies given in Bamenda, I saw people, families, religious sisters that we are working, schools, hospitals, and what we are experiencing in the place where they are working. They are serving the people, but yet they are being kidnapped. It happens also in Nigeria. There you see priests being killed and kidnapped, even bishops kidnapped, sisters kidnapped, and people, lay people, ordinary people that are struggling for their daily lives. And you see that the problem is that those that people are victims of what they are innocent of, because it is between the separatists and the government, but they cannot reach these people.
And at some point it becomes transactional, where it's the kidnappings become about the ransom money.
Exactly, because those people, they need also to finance what they are doing. And the easiest way to finance such thing is to kidnap and then demand that people pay ransom. So it happens in Cameroon, it happens in Nigeria. So on this, I say it is the same thing. But when you look at the government structure, I think there may be difference between Nigeria and Cameroon.
Final point on this, Charlotte Walker Said, you heard earlier Father Nyege talking about how the Catholic Church in the Northwest goes to places where others don't. Faced with the insecurity, as just described there by Father Chukwujekwu, what can the Church do?
The Church has been extremely important in organizing dialogue, and that's something that the Pope himself has used, that term or phrase, dialogue, consistent dialogue. The Church has really set up a number of mutual dialogue sessions. They host a lot of town halls inside churches, and they call people to collective worship. And worship in the history of this region is really part of public and social healing. So the Church is going to be an instrumental part of peace if and when it occurs in Cameroon.
Yeah, and the Church as a mediator, a Church that is a mediator, but also calls what it sees. When he touched down from Algeria on Wednesday, the Pope made his message clear, addressing Cameroon's president of 44 years in French.
In order for peace and justice to prevail, the chains of corruption, which disfigure authority and strip it of its credibility, must be broken. Hearts must be set free from an idolatrous thirst for profit. True profit comes from integral human development. That is, the balanced growth of all the aspects that make life on this earth a blessing.
Father Nyege, it's the job of a pope to call for justice and peace. That's not normal. But here the words, are they, would you agree, more pointed than we've heard from past pontiffs? idolatrous thirst for profit on the part of leaders. Blessed be the peacemakers, but woe to those who manipulate religion in the name of God. Were you expecting this kind of language from Leo?
That's a very good question. I think that I could expect it from him, from what I have been listening in recent weeks, especially with his relationship with the US president. Because when he's talking about the manipulation of religion, he's not really talking about religion in Cameroon, because Cameroon, there is certain freedom of religion in Cameroon. I think that his message is broader than Cameroon. But on the other hand, that vision of peace that he offered is also challenging Cameroonian leaders to seek that peace in a very honest and authentic way.
Yeah, were you expecting him to be so pointed about tackling corruption when he's speaking with in the presence of Paul Biya? Again, those remarks, that clip we just heard, was in French with Paul Biya sitting next to him.
Exactly, and because he's speaking to a president who is also a Catholic and who is the one who invited him to Cameroon. And I think that there is no other person better than the Pope to really speak to that president and invite him to go to be more strong in his search for peace and more honest in engaging Cameroonian civil society. All Cameroonians need peace. All Cameroonians are thirsty of peace. And the Pope was really reinforcing the message pushed in recent weeks and years by Cameroonian bishops to fight against corruption and to promote good governance and common good in this country.
I'll put the question to you differently, Father Nyege. Again, fourth papal visit. Have you ever heard a Pope speak to Paul Biya in that manner?
Not really, not at all, because the situation is also very difficult right now. In the past, Pope will visit Cameroon. The first time it was in 1985. It was a really great time of hope. And then came Benedict twice. It was really important moments for the church in Africa as a whole. But this time, I really think that the Pope came as a messenger of peace and reconciliation and justice, and in a context where Cameroon is really becoming worried about its own future and is calling for change, political change.
In his own remarks, Paul Biya skirting criticism and instead noting that Leo's, quote, apostolistic journey to Cameroon is taking place in an especially difficult international context.
Yes, Your Holiness. The world needs the message of peace, justice, tolerance, forgiveness, and love, of which you are a bearer.
Yeah, Charlotte Walker-Said, it sounded a little like Paul Biya wanted to talk about Donald Trump instead of Paul Biya.
Perhaps. I think this Pope has routinely used the word peace in tandem with the word justice, and believes that peace is not merely the absence of conflict, but is the implementation of justice. And this is essential in Cameroon, as well as in the global north, as well as in the United States.
And in the case of addressing President Biya at this particular time in history where he's been in power for 44 years, we barely saw him on the campaign trail when he ran for re-election last year. There are political opponents that are in jail. Will those words matter, or once once the plane takes off for Angola, Paul Biya is out of the limelight and it's back to business as usual?
I think that Pope Leo XIV is speaking to the people as much as he is speaking to Paul Biya. He wants the people to take responsibility for leading nonviolent grassroots mobilizations for democratic change. This is an enormous responsibility, but he knows that it lies in the hands of the voters and of the people to implement these justice mechanisms, to demand accountability. Paul Biya is unlikely to take the Pope's words to heart in his history, but the Pope Leo is visiting Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, and Angola, whose presidents or ruling parties have been in power for between 45 and 60 years. So the Pope is visiting these three countries in sub-Saharan Africa that have had some of the longest tyrannical rule periods on the continent. And so the Pope really does insist that people take this into account and implement these justice mechanisms to create new political realities.
Father Chudreku, you heard Charlotte Walker Said saying he's not really addressing Paul Biya. He's speaking over the president to the Cameroonian people when he calls out corruption in his speech. Your thoughts on is this the right way to go about it? Is that the job of a pope?
The job of the Pope as the father is to say the truth. And the truth should not be pampered sometimes. I think the Pope addressed Paul Biya, as she said, not just Paul Biya, but every one of us, because corruption does not start and end with one person. There is always chain. It begins with somebody and goes beyond. When you look at what is happening, you said already that during the campaign for the re-election, the president that was campaigning for re-election was barely not there. I think if there was no corruption, I think it would have been another way. So in the same thing, everything happening where there are problem, difficulties, injustices, and social issues, it starts from somewhere. It continues, but we need someone to break it. And when Pope speaks, he is challenging each person to take a permanent decision to break corruption. Even if you are a teacher in a school, if you are a head teacher in a school, you can break corruption by doing things in the right way. So I think Pope is talking to Paul Biya, every other leader, and then he's talking to every other person sitting there, because each of them, in one way or the other, you saw also there were village chiefs that were there. When you look at their own system of functioning as village chiefs, you also find corruption. So the problem is that corruption has become endemic, and it is existing in almost every part of the society.
And the last time a pope visited was Benedict in 2009.
Yes, exactly.
Corruption existed then. So why is this pope speaking in a more pointed manner? Why is the tone so different this time?
Yes, I think exactly just as my brother priest said also, the situation of 10 years of crisis in a place. And you can imagine that since this crisis started, even the president has not visited that area. If you're a president of the whole nation. You cannot be a president in the capital. But as I heard from the investigation, he has not even visited that place. So if Pope spoke this way, it means that things are getting out of hand. So there is need to say the naked truth so that people, it may be difficult, it may be somehow difficult, but let them hear the truth as it is without mixing it up.
All right. It's not often, by the way, that the President of the United States takes down one of his own social media posts. But even though Donald Trump claims that an AI image of himself was depicted of him as a doctor, he says, not as Jesus, you can judge for yourself looking at the picture. He did take this one down amid uproar. Trump, who continues to bash Pope Leo, his vice president, J.D. Vance, himself a convert to Catholicism, has also drawn heat in the last days for criticizing the head of the Catholic Church, first in an interview on TV News, and then answering hecklers at a conservatives students conference.
I think it's very, very important for the Pope to be careful when he talks about matters of theology. And I think that one of these issues here is that there has been, again, hey, random dude screaming, I told you I'd respond to your point. I just want to respond to this question first. But I think one of the issues here is that if you're going to opine on matters of theology, you've got to be careful. You've got to make sure it's anchored in the truth. And that's one of the things that I try to do. And it's certainly something I would expect from the clergy, whether they're Catholic or Protestant.
Let me begin you. Father Nyege, how do Cameroonians feel about the U.S. Vice President effectively lecturing the sovereign pontiff?
We have been focused on the Pope's visit in Cameroon, and we didn't really pay too much attention to what is happening in the U.S. and its politics. But what I can tell you is that in continuity with the conversation we are just having the Pope in this particular region of Cameroon is really an important matter, because at least now we can have time to discuss about that important crisis in Cameroon, and at the same time talk about this political transition that may be going on right now. As far as how the Pope is welcome in Cameroon, I think that you witness yourself how he was welcomed from the airport and to the cathedral today in Bamenda. People are happy. They are very happy to welcome their father. For them, he is a consoler, someone who is bringing them joy, hope, and peace in a context when they have been forgotten most of the time.
Charlotte Walker Said, your thoughts
Love
about
our Pope.
Walker Said, a poll that was put out a couple of months ago said that 80% of U.S. Catholics have a positive view of the Pope. What has been the mood where you are in the last week since Donald Trump started taking aim at Leo?
I think both, interestingly, both in the United States and in Africa, there is starting to be more of a realization that religious faith produces knowledge about both, I would say, it produces knowledge and judgments about the world of lived experience. And your religious faith allows you to know and to judge according to both your conscience and the theology in a way that is expressly political. And I think that Africans and Americans are really being, I think, influenced by this Pope to recognize that faith is not an otherworldly belief system, but that it is embodied in politics, economics, and social relations.
There's a split, though, right, among Catholics in the United States. There's a more conservative strain when they thought there'd be an American Pope, perhaps, after the death of Francis. Some thought it might be a more conservative one. Instead, Leo, who has a very different background from some of those who are close to J.D. Vance, who you heard in that clip, how big is the divide among Catholics where you are?
I would say I cannot say exactly where the division line falls, but I would say that there is a large proportion of Catholics who are interested in social justice. And the Catholics who are interested in social justice are very attached to this Pope and see him as a guiding light. And those who are not so concerned with social justice perhaps see him as too overtly partisan for the cause of the vulnerable. But I do believe, as a Catholic myself, and I believe the teachings of Jesus call us to be partisans of the vulnerable.
Well, and there's also another element, which is obedience to the faith. But I suppose there's always been arguments within the church over whether or not the Pope is doing a good job. Father Chukwujeku, let me ask you about this, because we even heard the U.S. president say, "Oh yeah, he wouldn't have been elected Pope if it hadn't been for me being the U.S. president." What are your thoughts on that?
I think it is funny when a political figure or politician begins to lecture the Pope himself. So I think it is an error for the on such statement to say that if I have not been the president, he would not have been elected the Pope. If I got it right, the system of election of the Pope is organized by the Church in a very systematic way, and it has endured the ages. So the statement on that is really not in order, if I may say.
Now, the Pope says, he's not a political figure, but as you just heard from Charlotte Walker Said, it's issues like defending the rights of the meek, defending the rights of immigrants, calling for an end to war. Of course, these are all political statements that a Pope makes.
Yes, the Church, of course, politics is everything about the people. The Church, or the Pope, does not take decision on political issues, or negotiations. But these things are heart of the life of the people, because everything about politics is about the life of the people, and the Church is there also to enlighten and then give way on to give instructions or to give inspirations on how people will be guided and be led. So the political issues cannot be completely separated from the life of the Church, because the Church is working on the people.
All right. And in the United States, Protestants far outnumber all other religions, but the Roman Catholic Church is still the largest single organized one. 1 in 5 Americans identify as such. In the past year, by the way, since the election of the first U.S.-born Pope, there's been a wave of conversions in the U.S., particularly among young men. The Washington Post last week reporting that Gen Zers are increasingly drawn to the Catholic Church as they seek, quote, truth, beauty, and yes, girlfriends. The piece quotes a priest in Greenville, South Carolina, saying, I don't want to be too disparaging about some of the more evangelical religions because there are Christian brothers and sisters, but worshiping in a big former supermarket with dry ice machines and a pop band, it's not really traditional Christianity. Father Longnecker said his new parishioners are attracted to, quote, very traditional worship with lots of incense and altar boys and sacred music in the traditional style. In other words, they want it to look and sound Catholic. Charlotte Walker Said, A, have you seen this uptick in interest in the Catholic faith since Leo became Pope? And B, what do you attribute it to?
Oh, absolutely. So St. Joseph's Parish on 6th Avenue in Greenwich Village is bursting at the seams. And even a little bit before, Grace Church, which is an Episcopal church, also had its largest attendance at Easter services the past 2 years. So even in New York, which is considered a very secular, edgy city, there has been enormous new interest in Catholic and Protestant faith and public
Why
worship.
is that?
I think there's a multitude of factors. I think there has been a questioning of some of the earlier departures from the church as a source of moral authority. I think there are more people seeking moral leadership, and they're looking for that in the church. And I do believe that it's a result of a lack of moral leadership in the political sphere.
It's kind of counterintuitive because we live in an age now where people get their self-help online. What draws them to go to an actual physical church?
Membership in a community of like-minded people. I think that's really the whole foundation of the faith. Father Jean-Luc Nyege taught me that in French Cameroon, it was appartenance. Appartenance is membership.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
A sense of belonging.
Yeah.
That you're one of a member of a sense of belonging.
And Father Nyenge, of course, be it in Latin America, in Africa, we've seen the rise of evangelical churches over the past decades. What does the Catholic faith bring in that context? And what's your look on this fact that suddenly there's renewed interest in the U.S. To going to church?
The Catholic Church in Africa remains the strongest of all Christian churches in terms of membership and presence in having a social impact in society. We know from the data from Georgetown in 2015 that the church in Africa has grown since 1980 about 257% of Catholic growth in Africa. And as we are discussing about all these issues of wars in Africa, the Catholic Church is everywhere, in all corners, small villages. There is no other institution that has broader and deep implantation in the African context with a unified system of governance, which can also help coordinate their best effort. What is happening in the Western world, so I think it has to do with what happened with COVID-19. I think that we are seeing the same phenomenon taking place in Europe, in France, in Spain, where we are having a kind of revival among adult Catholics who are coming back to the church to receive baptism. I think that COVID-19 made the people feel that they needed to belong to something, to a network, to a community, to share their hopes and anxieties with others. We are also told from some data in France that the very burning of the Cathedral Notre Dame de Paris also really made people think twice about what is the meaning of life. And I think the Catholic tradition offers certain continuity and stability and an organized structure.
Father Chukwujeku, here you are, a Nigerian in a country of lapsed Catholics, France. Your thoughts on how things have evolved in the time that you've been here?
I've been in France for some number of years now. I can say, first of all,
is there a COVID effect, as was described there by Father Nyege?
Yeah, exactly what he said also is you remember now in France this year, in the Catholic Church of France, we have almost 21,000 baptisms. So every year it is going up. I know in my parish, last 2 years I had one, last year I had two, this year I had 6 baptisms. Next year I'm preparing 7 baptisms. So it's going up. And as they said, it is different things that are contributing to that, influence of social network, and then so many things. And then the church is like people, as my sister said also, the request for membership. Already they get these things from this place. They seek to belong also to a community. I know that in my parish, certain people said, I feel welcomed. I find myself a home in the church. So it influences people coming into the church to find belonging there. In Africa, in Catholic Church, as they said, yes, I agree to the fact that Catholic Church is doing wonderfully very well, but we have also to understand the challenges of other evangelical and Pentecostal churches, which sometimes it influence even some of the Catholic churches members that there is a quest also for miracle, even in the Catholic churches.
But they want their church to be more charismatic?
Exactly. People are even requesting the bishop to send them charismatic priests because they desire to have a miracle worker, somebody that can preach, that can expel evil spirit and all these things. And that is why even this apostolic journey of Pope Leo is very, very important, because it's like he is drawing people back to their roots.
Why?
Yes, because...
Is he more or less is he charismatic in that regard, the way you describe it there? He's not a miracle worker.
He's charismatic in his own, because charisma is having a gift. He has his own way of doing things. And you know, the Catholic Church should not be in competition. I think that is the message. It should not be in competition with others. The Catholic Church comes with to catechize, to teach, And then with other social things, schools, hospitals, and these are the things that have given the Catholic Church a special identity in every part of the world. If I go back in the history of Nigeria, of Eastern Nigeria, when the missionaries came, that was what happened. It was a French missionary that brought mission in Eastern Nigeria, Father Lutz. He came with schools, with hospitals, and it really boomed. So it added to the mission of teaching.
So, Father Nyege, these dangerous times,
Yes.
times of war, they call for a straight-talking, dare I say it, a charismatic pope. You need someone with a little more oomph.
Yes, I think that we already have a very strong Cameroonian bishop, bishops with a very charismatic appeal. What the Pope is really bringing is that unified voice that is bringing together all these Cameroonian voices that has been kind of sometimes sidelined. And with the Pope's visit, he really gives voice to what the bishops have been saying for years now. And I think that his people are more eager to listen to him. And that charismatic appeal that Father Chooks just mentioned is also a real thing. There is a real Pentecostalization of Roman Catholicism in Africa. And Africans are not really fighting against it. I think that they tend to be more flexible in terms of religious belongings and faiths. What the Pope is bringing is a more unifying leader in a time of crisis, someone who can speak to the people when we don't have any voice, neither in politics or in a religion that can sound louder than his own. I think that's what he's bringing as a charisma.
Charlotte Walker Said, it's not yet been a year since we saw white smoke in St. Peter's Square. Leo XIV, is he what you expected?
I would say I am surprised by the assertiveness of his speech and his belief, again, that religious faith can and must be political.
Is it the right way to go is always the question. Is this what's needed in 2026?
I think it is absolutely what's needed. I know that in the United States, Cardinal Michael Zerny said it himself. He said, Christianity is political because politics is our way of living together and of solving problems together. And there are certainly a lot of problems, whether it's the Iran war, whether it's a multitude of issues related to migration, poverty, corruption, and violence all over the world. The Christian faith, and particularly Catholicism, must be mobilized to solve problems together.
We'll have to leave it there, unfortunately. So much more to talk about. Charlotte Walker Said, so many thanks for joining us from New York. Father Henry Djukwekju, I want to thank you. And Father Jean-Luc Nyege for being with us from Cameroon's capital, Yaoundé. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24.
Thank you.
Thank you.